let's take this. The president making history yesterday by crossing a different border, becoming the first American president to step foot on North Korean soil during a previously unplanned meeting with Kim Jong Un at the DMZ. The meeting marks the pair's third sit-down. It came after the president extended an invitation on Twitter while he was visiting South Korea following the G20 summit. Afterward, the president said, quote, "A lot of progress was made," and thanked Lil Kim for not standing him up. So hot.
Chairman Kim, for something else. When I put out the social media notification, if he didn't show up, the press was going to make me look very bad. So you made us both look good, and I appreciate it.
And then he gave him a giant wheel of Swiss cheese and the world was safer. The president also telling reporters the two sides agreed to resume nuclear talks in the next few weeks, but some say it was nothing more than a photo op, obviously.
I have no problem with him sitting down with Kim Jong Un in North Korea or any place else. But I don't want it simply to be a photo opportunity.
Oh, Bernie, what else would you do? Wave your hands. All right, so can the president's big weekend lead to a big deal, or is it all still just a big show? Well, look at this. The panel is here with me live in Los Angeles tonight. We've got former George H.W. Bush speechwriter and Atlas Society CEO Jennifer Grossman and her giant dollar bill, y'all. Also, Fox News political analyst and Caldwell Strategy Consulting founder, who is appropriately named Gianno Caldwell, and liberal radio talk show host and Fox News contributor and beloved Angelino. It is Leslie Marshall. Welcome, everyone. Hurrah! So when I look at this and I look at some of the blowback that the president is getting, and I give him a hard time on tariffs, I give him a hard time on foreign policy and some of the other impulsive things that he says and does. But here I have appreciated everything he's done in the North Korean sphere. And I look at this and I think every time he has a sit down, and maybe nothing has come from it yet, but it's a hell of a lot better than strategic patience. What do you see?
I agree, actually. In terms of results, time will tell.
Yes.
But overall, I tend to think that when you've got adversarial parties, it's a lot harder to demonize someone if you don't have a personal connection. So whether it's bickering neighbors or competing groups or different political parties, I think developing a personal relationship between adversaries is a good thing.
And it's tough because we all want to take North Korea to task the same way we want to with Saudi Arabia and Turkey and even Russia and call them, and China, call them on their human rights abuses. But you have to get them to the table first. And so this is our third trip to the table.
Third trip.
When do we see success?
Well, I think one can argue that we're seeing a level of success by getting them to the table. Two, we also have to keep in mind that President Trump is a very unconventional president, so we can't expect the same policy prescriptions that have been employed in the past to work here. Before he actually was sworn in as president, Obama administration told him that this was going to be his most serious foreign policy issue.
Yes.
And he was right. They were right, especially.
But it's interesting because at the Democratic debate the other night, North Korea was not at the top of the podium when the candidates were asked what the greatest geopolitical threat was. And of course, Jay Inslee pandered and says, "It's Donald Trump himself."
Well, truthfully speaking, though, it has become less severe because we have been able to get them to the table and have these discussions. As you know, a lot of times, especially under the Obama administration, when they made threats, when they sent out these long-range missiles, we largely ignored it. It came up in the news here and there, but we didn't say much about it. But Donald Trump went on Twitter and said, "I'll release," fire, hell and fire onto North Korea? And then that brought them to the table, hell and fury.
Sure.
It was something that was in a book title.
Yeah, there were books, there was fire, there was fury, there was hell on earth. But it's almost like meth. So the meth dealer will give you a try. He'll give you a baggie, and then you get hooked on it. And that's what happened with Kim Jong Un. Like, he loves the idea of being part of the international community. He wants to be a K-pop star. He wants to huff down as much Swiss cheese as he can, but he can't do that when he and his cronies are hamstrung by these sanctions. So is this working?
No. No, and sadly with the president, look, I mean, I'm a Democrat, I'm not a Trump supporter, but this is something left and right we want, which is, we don't want to see North Korea have nuclear weapons, but they do. One, we have to acknowledge it. Two, we have to ask.
But how do you denuclearize them?
To me, nobody is asking
Do you
him.
go and take them?
Why doesn't anybody just ask him, what would it take for you to feel secure enough that you don't need them? Nobody's asked that.
Well, he says lift the sanctions first. Actually, he has been asked that.
Well, we're not
first.
going to demilitarize the entire peninsula, and that's one of the things that he wants. And in addition to that, he doesn't have term limits. His death will be the term limit. So he can play and drag this out as long as he wants. We saw his father do it. We saw his grandfather do it. And I think Democrat and Republican, they both have these obstacles with North Korea. You just can't trust them. And sadly, I do think this is going to be nothing more than a photo op.
And I will give the president credit here. You have to take a different approach to this problem. And, you know, I look at this and I always think to myself, whenever there are these sort of watershed moments, what would Hillary have done? Because I don't think Hillary would have gotten us to this point. Right. I don't think she would effectively have used insults. I don't think she would have sat down with him. I think it would have been an extension of strategic patience, which got us nothing. And by President Obama's own admission, it made us less safe in terms of North Korea, because when he left office, that was the greatest threat.
Right.
You know, I would say also, even if you agree with the premise that it was a photo op, it was a much better photo op for Trump than for Kim. Look at those 30 seconds. Look at the body language. He waited for Kim to extend his hand first. He took the hand. He gave him a pat on the shoulder. He did the overhand grip. He pointed across the border. He stepped across the border. He gave him another pat. So in terms of optics, I think the president did a pretty masterful job.
Well, and I think he's appealing to his ego. And I don't, you know, it's like you say it's failed. I don't think we can say it's brilliant, and I don't think we can say it's failed, because there's so much outstanding that we really don't know what the end result is going to be.
Well, I'm not saying that it's failed. I'm just saying that I will go to Vegas, but just knowing North Korea's history, not just with this leader, but with now a third generation of this family's leadership in North Korea.
But they never dealt with a president like Trump, though.
That this will not change. I don't think that's going to change.
I think Kim Jong Un legitimately thinks that something about President Trump is a madman. He does not know what he's going to do. And what's true about this, most presidents have used the same conventional wisdom. Yeah. This president has not employed that same conventional wisdom.
No, it has been unconventional, and Kim Jong Un knows that he's got golden
he's
toilets.
Concerned. This is a guy who might actually.
I want to hang with a guy who's got golden toilets.
North Korea's not changing their behavior, though. When I see change in behavior, and after this they say change behavior, I will give them the props.
Well, listen, we're in Los Angeles, California right now. About 2 years ago, people thought that there was going to be a long-range missile sit over here.
Absolutely.
We no longer fear that.
To people in
There's
Hawaii
been a change in behavior. Let's be clear about that.
I do it all the time online in these weird little chat rooms. All right, the president may have owned the headlines with his high-stakes huddles this weekend, but it's unclear if that will help him own the Democrats in 2020. Raising expectations with China and North Korea could backfire should the president fail to make a deal either on trade or denuclearization. And to hear the Democrats tell it, he shouldn't be meeting with Kim Jong Un at all.
Well, look, I am all for speaking with our adversaries, but
the song
is returning later. Right. And, you know, the quest
and how the billion
Los Angeles, California right now. About 2 years ago, people thought that there was going to be a long-range missile sit over here.
Absolutely.
We no longer fear that.
I've talked to people in
There's
Hawaii
been a change in behavior. Let's be clear about that.
I do it all the time online in these weird little chat rooms. All right, the president may have owned the headlines with his high-stakes huddles this weekend, but it's unclear if that will help him own the Democrats in 2020. Raising expectations with China and North Korea could backfire should the president fail to make a deal either on trade or denuclearization. And to hear the Democrats tell it, he shouldn't be meeting with Kim Jong Un at all.
Well, look, I am all for speaking with our adversaries, but what's happened here is that this president has raised the profile of a dictator.
Oh, Julian. He was hardly alone in giving the president the business end of his arm. Here's Ohio Congressman and 2020 candidate Tim Ryan, who decided to go dumb or go home. Poor buddy.
They talk about historic moments. This is historic. Him going to North Korea is like Chamberlain going to talk to Hitler.
Because when in doubt, invoke Hitler. The president is being criticized by every serious candidate, and also Beto. But is Donald Trump right to be down the DMZ, or is he just being naughty by nature? So, Leslie, I will start with you, because Beto O'Rourke saying that if he was elected president, he was continue diplomacy contingent on progress. I don't know what that means. And I don't think Beto O'Rourke is some master negotiator who could lay out the terms and talk tough, and he would bring Kim Jong Un somehow closer to denuclearization.
I agree with you on that, and that's why he's not in the top 5.
That's right.
I mean, he gave a really great, passionate speech about taking a knee in the African American community and slavery and history. And what we're seeing from both these debates, and we saw it on the right back in 2016 as well, is some people work really well with competitors on stage, and some people work really well with themselves in an audience.
And I want to talk about this because we haven't had a huge chance to talk about the debates yet. Talked about night one a little bit last Thursday, but he was attacked by de Blasio and Julian Castro, both of them. I mean, they went after him because they know he's so vulnerable that they gotta cull the herd at some point. Amy Klobuchar, we've seen a history where Trump announces a summit and nothing really comes of it. Is she onto something there?
No.
Is she on dope?
Well, I think dope is probably right. Some kind of dope. A dopey idea. How about that? That makes you feel comfortable? So what I've seen...
You don't like what somebody says. Why don't we go for her hair
They're a
and
drug
clothing?
addict.
Listen, I wouldn't say crack because, I mean, I'm from Chicago. Anyway,
Crack is whack.
crack is whack. Wouldn't you hear it correct? But you know, truthfully speaking, especially you talk about the debates, we're bringing that in. What I saw there was lies, deception, and talking points. And what we're missing here is people willing to have an honest discussion about the issues at hand, things that truly impact our country. And that's why they're having a problematic... You okay, Leslie?
No, I'm fine.
I want to bring Jennifer in because
I'm not loving what you're saying.
So Bill Maher, and there was a lot of exasperation on the Democrat side after the debates. Because other than the Kamala Harris moment, which I'm going to talk about in my memo a little later on in the show, there weren't too many big defining moments. And in fact, Bill Maher, in an impassioned plea, asked people like Tim Ryan and Bill de Blasio to just get out of the race. Like, John Hickenlooper, what are you doing? This seems to be an embarrassing vanity project for a bunch of very ordinary establishment politicians.
Yeah, so far I'm seeing two main themes that seem to be arising from the Democratic primary debates. One is envy and one is greed. They love to attack the rich. They love to blame the 1%. They love to go after greed. But true greed is the desire for the unearned, and that is what these Democrats are pandering to.
Yeah, that's a very, very good point.
Sounds like poetry.
And I think, but I think a lot of it is driven by envy. And, you know, jealousy that someone else has something great and you have to demonize that in order to level the playing field.
Right.
And, you know, the quest for equality will never bring you freedom.
Yeah, but truthfully...
But the quest for freedom will bring you equality.
But yeah, I must still go get a billionaire's money to run my campaign.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't have it both ways. And this is what I found to be very... Leslie loves what I'm saying. Thank you, Leslie. I'm getting these good vibes.
We're gonna talk more about the second debate a little later because the panel is returning later. They are that good. President Trump today signing a $4.6 billion aid package to help with the surge of migrants at our southern border. Never mind those Canadians. Most of that money will go toward improving the conditions that migrant children are facing after the trek. This comes after this moment from the first Democratic presidential debate. Watch.
Raise your hand if your government plan would provide coverage for undocumented immigrants. Okay.
Yay, free money. That's right. Every 2020 Democratic candidate on stage committed to providing health care to every illegal immigrant in America. President Trump reacting by declaring it the end of the race. So did Democrats' health care giveaway cause them to give away the election? The panel is back. Jennifer Grossman, Gianno, Caldwell, and Leslie Marshall. Leslie, you are one of the more rational Democrats that I am fortunate enough to talk to on a regular basis. That is unsustainable.
it's going to work for a primary, which is why you saw people raise their hands, and you saw people like Joe Biden raise his hand very slowly and very low compared to others. And this is something that they know. Right now, they're fighting against each other, you know, to become the Democratic nominee.
They're political children.
But you know, we've seen historically Democrats especially move to the center in the general election, and I think we'll see that as well. However, we are paying for undocumented workers' health care whenever they walk into an emergency room. The emergency room, by federal law,
so right
has
now,
to treat them.
all right, so right now you have Bernie Sanders Medicare for All. It's going to cover dental, vision, rehab, maternity, in addition to all of your other healthcare needs except for nose jobs. That's a lot to cover. Cover illegal immigrants, why wouldn't you cover Canadians? You have to. I mean, that law will be challenged.
Well, I wrote about this, and I think you and I have talked about this here and on Outnumbered. Medicare for All is not a good idea because the Medicare program, the Medicare program,
don't create new entitlements.
The Medicare program
cut the old ones because we can't afford those
on its own. However,
that's like getting up to your eyeballs in debt and applying for a new credit card.
Providing insurance for everyone in this country, not under the guise of Medicare for all, is something that is something desired by both left and right. They just don't want to pay for it.
Yeah, you realize you're also covering everyone in every other country. That's what you're doing. Gianno, take it away.
You know, I grew up poor on the south side of Chicago, and when I hear these politicians, these elected officials continue to talk about taking care of people from other countries, it's really disturbing to me. We in California have a $200 billion budget, the state budget is. 1/3 of that goes to health care. Starting January 1st, 2020, they're going to allow illegal immigrants up to the age of 26 to be on health care, thereby having us pay even more money when we're already taxed enough already in the state.
That's why Texas is turning blue, by the way, because so many Californians are leaving.
But they know exactly what they're doing. Yeah. They're no longer relying on the black vote because they feel they have that locked up. They know by 2020 there's going to be, for the first time, immigrants are rather going to be the biggest minority in this country voting. So now they're trying to appease these groups versus provide real policy solutions for those individuals in this country that are either here legally or were born here. So
I would love to see someone cut spending, though. No one's going to do that. I mean, this is like this laundry list, this giveaway.
Well, they're definitely not going to cut spending if we're just going to continue to have a debate about policy, about history, about math. While I was sad to see the Democrats moving the party so far to the left, I am happy that this is providing an opportunity to have the conversation which we need to have, which is about, let's talk about fairness. Let's talk about justice. Let's ask, is it fair to demonize the most successful, to take from one group and to redistribute it to another person? No. I think that's the debate that we have to have.
Let's talk about the 60,000 homeless people in Los Angeles.
But bureaucracies are horrible at taking money and moving it somewhere else. You know, there's so much corruption and there's so much ineptitude that it never gets where it's meant to go. And you end up hurting people at the very bottom. The safety net, when you expand it, it really destroys the lives of those who are most in need and most vulnerable.
And it destroys national character, I would argue.
Well, I think that's just right, Jennifer Grossman. Thank you so much, Leslie, Gianno, and Jennifer.